Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Maya Rupert, and I am Maya Wiley's campaign manager. I will take that applause because this is one of the proudest. I'm incredibly proud to be her campaign manager, and I'm incredibly proud of that every single day, but I'm particularly proud of it today because we have brought folks together to do and to talk about two of the things that I am most excited about Maya Wiley as a candidate and a person. One is we are about to roll out some more incredibly bold, ambitious, progressive policy that is going to transform the city. Today we're going to be talking about housing, and Maya is going to get an opportunity to tell you all about an incredible plan that she has to end homelessness, to make housing truly affordable. And the centerpiece of that plan is a rent guarantee that is going to make sure that working families are not paying more than 30% of their income in rent. The second thing that we're going to get a chance to talk about today is Maya's background. And this is something I get to talk about and think about a lot because one of the questions I get a lot is, why did you make the decision to support Maya Wiley? Maya's background is as a civil rights scholar, a civil rights lawyer, an attorney, a Black woman, and a mom. And every single one of those pieces of what she has done and who she is and how she has lived inform the way that she has run this campaign, what you see of her every single day, and what you will see from her as mayor. Civil rights scholars know that this moment that we're in right now did not just happen. This is something that folks have been preparing for and thinking of. The policies that people are putting out right now and finally are getting their due are because of years and years of scholarship that so many people have put in, so that when we got to a moment where we actually had the political will to not just manage our way out of a crisis, but to actually enact structural change that's needed to undo legacy and decades and structural and institutionalized racism, that we were going to be in the position to do it. So Maya's background as a scholar who knows this stuff, who's steeped in this stuff, when she's talking about policy, is calling on those decades of scholarship, inform why she is the right person for this moment. Her background as a civil rights attorney means that she knows how to use the law and to navigate the law to make sure that everyone is being taken care of. And in a moment we are seeing so many of the ugly vestiges and so much of the impact of racism, of structural racism throughout the city. People of color in this city need a civil rights lawyer. She can do all of these things because this is how she's lived. This isn't new for her. This isn't just about her career. It's the way that she lived. That's the reality of being a Black woman. And when she talks about her experience, she talks about it from a place of lived experience. She talks about it as someone who was raised by civil rights activists and who knows what she is talking about because she walks it every single day. So when she walks up those steps to City Hall, she is going to be bringing a legacy along with her. And she's able to do it because she's a mom, because mothers can get things done, because mothers see the potential in a city, and she believes, and we believe, that mayors need to do that as well. So the reason I am so thrilled to support her, the reason I'm so proud to be here, is absolutely every single thing about Maya Wiley. And you don't have to take my word for it, because we've got some other folks here who are going to tell you exactly why they're supporting her as well. And I'm very proud to introduce you to our first speaker, Catherine Powell.
Thank you so much, Maya Rupert and Maya Wiley. It is my great pleasure to be here to support Maya Wiley. I'm a law professor at Fordham Law School, and more importantly, or perhaps just as importantly, a former colleague of hers from the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. We were both baby lawyers there. I have seen Maya as she has gone on to found and lead a nonprofit organization. She then went on to be counselor to Mayor de Blasio. But Maya really has it all, in and outside government, where she has led. We know in this moment, this is not just a pandemic. a health pandemic. We know that we are suffering interlocking pandemics of sexism, racism, and economic precarity. We need someone who represents the kind of experience that many of us that have provided barriers for many of us. Many Black women have stepped into positions of leadership as being mayors in big cities around the country. And it's time for New York City to join that list, not just because of the way it looks, but because of what it means to be able to draw on your lived experience that speaks to the varied experiences of all of us. Somebody who can bring an intersectional lens, who can lead from the bottom up. We are in a moment where people of color, women, particularly Black and Latinx women, get it coming and going. We both have suffered from being on the front line as essential workers without adequate protections and adequate pay, even while we also have been hit hard with unemployment, with layoffs, because of the sectors in which we tend to be concentrated, what I call the color of COVID. And so we need a leader who can raise up the economy and do so in an economically just way to help to make up for the intergenerational wealth gaps due to violence like Tulsa, as we're commemorating this week, and other acts of economic and physical violence. And so it's with great pride that I stand here to support Maya Wiley, our next mayor of this great city. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Now we're going to get a chance to hear from a champion for affordable housing and someone who's been a partner, City Council member Steve Levin.
Thank you very much, Maya. So I'm just thrilled to be here today for the unveiling of this plan by the next mayor of New York City, Maya Wiley. And you know, as we're going through the process here as New Yorkers of choosing our next mayor, you know, I think that by this plan today and by everything that she has done so far in this campaign and everything that she has done in her professional life and in her entire life, you know, we see with Maya Wiley that she lives her values. She lives her values. And her values are caring for all New Yorkers, making sure that we have an economically just city, that we focus our resources on equity, that we confront generations of systemic racism and generations of economic racism. And that comes from that foundation of values. And so I'm just so proud to be here today and every day of this campaign in support of Maya Wiley, the next mayor of New York City. Now, over the last several months, Shams and I and a number of advocates, I see Josh Dean here, a number of housing advocates have fought to make sure that people who are in shelter, the tens of thousands of New Yorkers who are still living in shelter, have an opportunity to actually get out of shelter and into permanent housing. And so we were able to, just last week, vote on a bill to raise the city FEPS voucher rate so that it's on par with Section 8. And that was a big accomplishment, and we're very, very proud of that. But there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. One of the issues that we were not able to address with that bill, and this is a cautionary note because it's a note that just indicates that there's always more work to be done. But one thing that we weren't able to address is that even when you're able to get out of shelter and into permanent housing, you still need to be able to earn a real living and hold on to that voucher and not have a benefits cliff. And so one of the cornerstones of what Maya Wiley is putting forward today is making sure that all New Yorkers that make up to 50% of AMI, the area median income, nobody has to pay more than 30% of their income towards rent. That is a huge, huge deal because, as we all know, the rent burden in New York City can be devastating. It can be devastating, and it can mean that you're unable to get out of debt, that you're unable to get out of rent arrears. And so by making sure that no New Yorker making up to 50% of area median income is rent burdened will be transformative for generations to come, to be able to build generational wealth and have the opportunity to be stably housed, pursue education, pursue increases in professional development. It all comes from stable housing, and that's what we're talking about here today. I'm so proud to be here. I'm so proud to be here with everybody that's here behind me today. And again, this is all about the commitment to the values of uplifting every single New Yorker, and that's why I'm proud to be here today with our next mayor, Maya Wiley. Thanks.
Team Maya was incredibly proud today to receive the endorsement of the Jim Owls Democratic Club, and today we have here a champion for freedom and equality, Alan Roscoff.
Happy day one of Gay Pride Month.
Woo!
Welcome to the village where it all began. I'm here to talk about crime. It's a crime that we've never had a black woman as mayor of New York City. It's a crime that people are being evicted and are homeless because there's been no plan to house people and to give people permanent housing. It's a crime that some of the front runners for mayor are to the right of center. Our best hope of electing a progressive to be mayor of New York City, a black woman who can do it all, who can teach this city competence and intelligence, is Maya Wiley.
Yes. Yes.
You know, we don't like Donald Trump here.
No.
Donald Trump doesn't like black people. Donald Trump doesn't like women. Let's give him a fuck you. We're going to elect a black woman for mayor of the city of New York. I've served on a board with Maya, the board of the Civil Rights Museum, a museum that's going to be built on Lenox Avenue and 145th Street. We would have meetings, there'd be 20, 25 people at the table. Maya was the smartest and most intelligent person at the table, coming up with ideas, coming up with solutions, coming up with plans on how we could succeed. We have to take the city back for the people. It was black women who gave us Georgia and gave us the United States Senate. It's going to be black women and allies who's going to give us Maya Wiley. Thank you.
All right, next up, I get a chance to introduce a friend who is incredibly instrumental in our housing plan. His fingerprints are all over it, and that was particularly important, I know, to Maya, because this is someone who has himself been an advocate. He has been directly impacted by the very issues that this plan is talking about, and so we are absolutely thrilled that he was able to help give us guidance and counsel and friendship through this process. Shams to Baron. Thank you.
I'm not going to be long today. I promise you.
We like it when you're long.
With Maya's plan, every New Yorker will be housed. Greetings, everybody. I'm so honored to be asked to participate in what is truly a historic moment. For me, it's a special event that recognizes the value and significance that myself and my peers experiencing housing insecurity and homelessness have. Several months ago, I was an unhoused person who spent a very significant amount of my life experiencing homelessness. I grew up in foster care since the age of 2, experiencing homelessness at the age of 10, and then being officially discharged to the streets at the age of 12. As a throwaway kid, I grew up on the wrong side of the tracks. While I can take pride in my history in the development of hip-hop, I can't seem to shake the trauma of growing up either housing insecure or unhoused. I guess that's why I stood up to the current mayor, who felt it was okay to move me around like cattle during the pandemic. For me, it triggered thoughts of what my ancestors went through as slaves and what I went through as a foster child, being moved from home to home, being dehumanized to be commodified simply for profit. It was during this struggle that I first met Maya. When she came to the Lucerne and spent time with us, hearing us out and listening to our concerns away from the cameras. I knew then that Maya was the real deal. When she got ready to launch her campaign, imagine my surprise when she invited me to join her First People's Summit as one of the community leaders whose ideas she wanted to hear. Maya knew that solving problems in New York wasn't just about hiring fancy consultants. It was about engaging with real people like me. Last year this time, I had very little hope that things would get better for those of us experiencing homelessness. But today, I stand here to say, thanks to Maya, I think we can come out of the cave. The cave as in Plato's allegory of the cave.
College Sam, go ahead.
We can come out of those caves that we've been in for so many years. No longer do we have to focus on the illusions being projected by the mayor, I meant to say by others. Maya has a very detailed plan, which I combed through and was allowed to contribute to, that addresses the inequities that lead to housing insecurity and homelessness. Her plan is just what our city needs to not only recover, but to also thrive. With Maya's plan, we will end homelessness. With Maya's plan, every New Yorker will be housed. That being said, please let me bring to you my friend, Maya Wiley. Hey!
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
How many of you can afford the rent? Anyone? I'm glad. How many of you are struggling to pay the rent? How many of you know someone who is afraid of eviction? That's too many. We stand in this city, in this country, in this world, but in particularly in this city, at a crossroads. At a crossroads. And we have two paths to choose between. Now, we can choose a path that says, let's just keep doing what we've been doing a little bit better. That's a path. Or we can choose a path that says it has been broken for too long. COVID didn't break it. COVID just made it worse.
That's right.
We had 200,000 New Yorkers facing eviction before COVID. I have a child whose best friend had an aunt traveling 2 hours from Easton, Pennsylvania, each way to get to a minimum wage job in New York City because she got pushed out. So there's a path that says, let's go back to January 2020, when it was 200,000 people facing eviction and 57,000 who were homeless. Or we can choose a different path that says we do not have to accept anyone who tells us that in one of the richest cities in the country, that in a state that represents 8% of this country's gross domestic product, 8%. This country doesn't make it without us, y'all. That we can't show this country how rather than spending $3 billion for folks to be in shelters they don't want to be in,
That's right.
we can spend less money and they can have a home.
That's right.
That's the choice. Now let me ask you something. What is leadership in a moment of such historic crisis that just laid bare what has been broken for years? What is leadership? This is leadership. This is leadership. We are all leadership. What we need as mayor is someone who stands up and has the courage to say, no, bureaucracy, you don't just get to turn the wheels. We're going to change the wheels.
That's right.
And we're going to roll on a new path that says we won't have homeless here. You know what the homeless crisis is? An eviction crisis.
That's right.
The reason we keep saying, how come we haven't solved it, is because we have ignored that it is about the rents being too high, which is exactly why we're going to do two things to end homelessness and keep people in their apartments. We are going to take our resources to get people who are homeless housed, but we're also going to create a rent subsidy that says if you're a family earning $54,000 a year or less, we're going to make sure you can afford the rent. Because those are the folks, when we're crossing this city, who say to me, what do you mean when you say affordable housing? Because we've had lots of housing built in this city that I can't afford. And as we look at the essential workers who showed up COVID or no COVID, whether it was to stock grocery store shelves or to take care of people in their homes who could not take care of themselves, those people, even as they work, were standing in food pantry lines because they had to choose between the rent or feeding themselves and their families.
That's right.
That is not who we are, and it's not the path we're going to choose on June 22nd.
That's right.
Because we need the courage to say to each other that we are New Yorkers. We don't do small, y'all.
That's right.
We go big or we go bold or we don't. And guess where we can't go? home because we can't afford the rent. So we're going to go big and bold on the path that says we are not going to accept going back to January 2020 when we had to choose between the rent and feeding our kids. We are not going to go back to literally over 100,000 children in shelters, going to our public schools, and insecure, traumatized, and all the children we have in this city wondering if they're going to get put out of their apartment. I knocked on a door in East Flatbush this weekend with Congresswoman Yvette Clarke, and a young man answered it. And when he answered the door, we were knocking for his mother. His mother wasn't home. And he said to me, I'm registered. And I said, okay, what are you most concerned about? He said many things. But one of the things, he looked at me and said, my mother has worked every day of COVID. She's $5,000 behind on the rent in an affordable house, in an affordable apartment. What are you going to do about that? And today I say, we're going to subsidize the rent because she's not getting evicted, you're not getting evicted, you will be back in school, you will be getting an education, and she will be able to be essential to every last one of us. And let me say something about both Catherine Powell and Maya Rupert's points about what it means to have the first civil rights attorney as mayor. Guess who's homeless? Literally, it is women of color with kids, as well as people of color who are struggling with mental health issues, including substance addiction. It is the communities that get ignored in every single crisis and its recovery. And to be a civil rights lawyer and to be a mom is to say, we're not letting anybody's families go down like that. We will not accept it because that's not our path. We are at a crossroads that says we, New York City, can fix these problems. We have the money.
That's right.
We have the people.
That's right.
We have the know-how.
That's
and
right.
We just need the courage of leadership that says we will confront those who tell us no, whether it's city government agencies, whether it's private real estate developers, or whether it's anyone who has just lost faith that there is a different path. And we will have the courage of leadership to listen. Because if we don't listen to the folks who are experiencing the problem, we do not solve it. We don't. And that's why Shams DeBaron is an expert. Nobody can tell Shams DeBaron or anyone else who's been homeless what it is.
That's right.
And no one else can tell any of them who have suffered how to fix it. Because they've had every promise broken and every plan a trauma. I want to say one other thing before I close. You know, some people have said, well, what does it mean? Why do you say we need a mother as mayor? Why should it be a black mother? Well, it's because our kids, all of our kids, are not going to become a lost generation. And it is because we will and do partner and listen. But moreover, it is because there is simply no mother that says we will tolerate a path that doesn't invest in our kids' future.
That's right.
Period. End of story. We go big, we go bold, and then everybody has a home.
That's right.
One last thing. I've just seen in the news that I have some folks, the Police Benevolent Association, and police unions, who have called me divisive. They have called me divisive because I have insisted that every single person in this city has to abide by the law. Every single one. There's simply no such thing as a public servant that gets to say, yeah, those laws don't apply to me. And the other thing about divisiveness is I have never called anyone an animal, but the Police Benevolent Association's Pat Lynch has. You know what I call people? Ours. You know why I call our boroughs? Ours. You know what I call all of our people? Our most precious resource. And you know what I say to the police unions? Police department, the police officers of the police department are people too. But whomever you are in this city, if you think we are animals, if you think you are above the law, then there's going to be a new sheriff in town after June 22nd that's going to say every single person in this city matters, counts, and no one is above the law, not even you. Thank you. I am the progressive that can win this race, and I think this is the demonstration of that, as well as having the support of 1199 SEIU, our essential workers, our home health aides, our nurses, who are the essential workers who need this plan and endorsed me in February. I am proud to have the endorsement of the entire Brooklyn congressional delegation because I am the progressive who can win this race, and I look forward to earning the vote of every single New Yorker so we can choose a path where we all prosper. That's why I'm running for mayor.
I wanted to ask, Mayor de Blasio made housing affordability a top priority. What do you think he fell short? Was there anything to learn from him on that issue during your time in the administration?
Look, what we have to do to solve homelessness and housing insecurity, folks facing eviction, folks not being able to buy food and pay the rent, is multiple strategies. And that's why we've laid out a plan that says we're going to stop the evictions, which is what's creating the problem, because we're going to subsidize people's ability to pay the rent and stay in their rental units, because that's going to stem homelessness. But we're also going to recognize homelessness can be solved through housing. And that's why in our New Deal New York plan, we're doubling the amount of the capital construction budget to create more permanently affordable housing for people who need deeply affordable housing. We're going to use our city resources, create a land bank so that we can bank our public resources, partner with not-for-profit developers, and make sure we're building permanently affordable housing for our folks. We're going to draw on every single resource, every single power of government, and every single partnership to get it done. I just said what my plan is going to be as mayor is going to be comprehensive. I support mandatory inclusionary zoning. As a civil rights lawyer, we've been calling for it for decades. The issue is whether we have all of the things happening to create more affordability and solve homelessness. That's what I'm going to do.
I guess real quick on Alan's comment. You sounded very outraged that front runners include these right of center candidates. What's your take on how the city is at that point just a few weeks to go? And it's not the kind of scenario that progressives have sort of been fantasizing about.
Look, you know what people are fantasizing about? Knowing that after this election, problems are going to be solved. Every single person, whether it's Orchard Beach in the Bronx or Mott Haven, whether it's Bed-Stuy in East New York, or whether it's Chelsea in the Lower East Side, what I'm hearing from New Yorkers is, what are you going to do to make it different? And every single candidate has to speak to that. And what I'm speaking to is exactly how we're going to choose a path that's big, that's bold, and that fixes what's broken once and for all. We do. So we're estimating that it will be approximately $1.5 billion for about 216,000 folks. But this is the thing. We get government working differently. That means we are using our relief dollars up front to start the subsidy, but we save money. What we are doing now is spending over $80,000 a year to keep people homeless. Does that make sense to anyone? It's cheaper to subsidize the rent. So the cost savings that we will bring in is also going to be what pays for it moving forward. And we're going to be building more deeply affordable housing over time as well, so that the stock is increasing for folks who need that level of housing.
Go ahead. So Andrew Yang has talked about we don't need another third term of Mayor de Blasio, contrast between him and other candidates that have been for the mayor. How would you respond to those comments and maybe the insinuation that you have predictions for the mayor?
Thank you. We're going to get you a home. We're going to get you a home. Thank you. Okay. I will do that. Brooklyn in the house. So the short answer is I am Maya Wiley. I have spent 30 plus years as a civil rights lawyer from the ACLU to the NAACP. I have spent my entire career working on government, and yes, I have the experience by working in government as well. And so what I'm here to say is we have never had a civil rights lawyer as mayor. We have never had a mother as mayor. We have never had a black woman as mayor. We have never had a mayor that speaks to all the things that we need to do in this city in a new and different way. That's a different path at the crossroads that says we don't go backwards. We go forwards, and we do it together.
Yeah, go ahead. So, free housing. So how would you be able to afford it? How can you get that afforded? And as our money inflates,
yeah, look, it is not free housing because people are paying rent. It's an additional amount of money so that they're not priced out of their apartment. No. Next question.
Yep, there we go.
Yep. So, yeah. There are multiple components to the plan, and we'll make sure you get it. But basically, we're going to do several different things, which are on the plan. But this is about making sure folks don't lose housing and are able to afford and stay in housing, while we're also building more housing and moving families and individual single adults housing. And that's also the voucher program is part of that as well. So this is about the level of ability to pay. So that's why we're saying we're going to do 50% of AMI and less, but we're also going to have a graduated scale so that people can go. So as people move up the income ladder, this is the City FEPS program point about the most recent legislation that's passed, so that people were getting a little bit of increments, still hold on to the subsidy till they get to a point that's 80% AMI.
Yeah, there you go.
And no 5-year cap.
And no 5-year cap. Yes, correct.
On ranked choice voting, what are you talking about? Are you advising people to spoke about rankings? And is there concern about ballots being discarded if people don't use the rankings?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. I am a proponent of ranked choice voting. I'm a fan because I think it makes our democracy stronger. I have been telling voters they should fill out all 5 if they can, and certainly not less than 3 if they don't feel able to pick more, but that to please try to fill out all 5. And also we're making sure that we're handing out material just on how ranked choice voting works, whether they vote for me or not, because we want every single New Yorker's voice to count and to make sure their ballots aren't thrown out. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a year since New Yorkers demonstrated protest racist police violence. A lot of those demonstrations started in Washington Park here. Still tons of demonstrations here. A lot Blasio administration and the police department recently decided to shut the park down early on weekends. They're citing disorderly people. They're having cops ride here, clear the park out. What do you make of that, and how would a Wiley administration?
Look, our public space has to be our public space, available and open to the public. And when we invest in people and what they need, and when we draw people in, as Shams DeBaron said, into the conversation about what solves our problems, we find a different way. Rather than saying we will do containment and control, we'll do support and participation.
Mayor de Blasio has been criticized, of course, for not doing enough about police accountability, but he also clashed with the head of the police union at the same time, and is now going after you, and that created a lot of issues, tensions, that turning their back on him. You're going to need the cops in some ways to, implement your reforms and be part of public safety. How do you govern and implement those reforms, notwithstanding that conflict with the union?
Oh, so here's the thing. I talk to a lot of police officers. A lot of police officers will not say it publicly, but there are a lot of things police officers want changed about policing. We need to recognize that we need smart, effective policing, and that we need to support and provide the incentives for our police officers to do that, just that. The PBA has never seen a constitutional violation it thought was unlawful. I will tell you that that's not the case for every single police officer on the police force. We're not doing an us, them, we're doing an all of us. And what we're talking about is the right balance between the job and the things we need to invest in, because I'm going to tell you right now, police officers do not sign up to be New York City police officers to be asked to go and deal with mental health crisis response.
All right.
And a huge part of our problem, I ain't done. A huge part of our problem is that we are failing to recognize how much we have failed people who are mentally ill, and that should not be put on the police department. It's not fair. It's not right. They don't want to do the job because that's not what they do. We need them focused on keeping illegal guns out of our city and off our streets. We have a 52% increase in rapes in this city. We need them focused on that. But when it comes to mental health, we need mental health outreach workers who help reach out to folks in the subways, in the parks, and say, we got help for you. We're going to solve this problem with you. We're going to provide supportive housing and supports for you. That is not what we should ask the police department to do, because it's not their job. Thank you.
One last question from Mayor of New York and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay, hi. Outreach, what we're going to have, imagine that you walk into the subway or walk into a park, and before you've gotten there have been mental health outreach workers. This model exists in the city. You can go to Staten Island right now and talk to Project Hospitality, who does just this in Staten Island. We know how to do it. We just have to align our resources around doing it, and we have to align this around saying we're going to get you the help and support and the housing. And this is something I learned from Shams DeBaron. And this man who just quoted Plato to you is the same man that when he was riding the subways, when he did not have a home because it was safer than where he was being sent to shelter, when the police came to him, do you know what they did? They said, we'll give you help. And then they handcuffed him and took him to a precinct. That's not the way we're going to solve this problem, and it's not the path we should choose, and we're going to choose a different path.
All right, thanks.
You were hearing Maya's message and stuff. What inspired you today to come out and show your support?
Well, I started watching Maya when she was a correspondent on the news, and I always admired the way that she was fearless, and she really talked back about the politicians, and she analyzed them, and she gave her opinion, and she was straightforward. And when I saw that she was running for mayor, I thought, wow, that's a major transition. And I wanted to come out here. I wanted to meet her. I wanted to tell her about an event that we're having in Harlem. And I know that she's a community person, so I'm with Vote People for Change in Harlem, and I wanted to let her know about that. And I also just wanted to meet this very bold woman and find out what she's about. Even though we have personal connections, but I really wanted to see what her platform was, and I'm really glad I came to see it. She has some very strong ideas, and she has a sense of fearlessness that I admire, and I feel so hopeful that we could do this, that maybe we have a future with her. You know, I feel really this morning I walked out of my house and I saw someone laid out on the ground when I went to go get my coffee, and that's in the heart of Harlem. So I really support someone who has who is going to be fearless of these bureaucrats here, and I'm just so hopeful for her.